On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters. And these monsters took more than 250 people hostage. And those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers and their grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages, but 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity. These are the names of the 20 living hostages. Matan Angrest, Gali and Zerv Berman, brothers, Elkanah Buchbot, Rom Braslavsky, Nimrod Cohen, Ariel and David Cunyo, another pair of brothers, Guy Gilboa Dalal, Eviatar David. You saw the picture of Eviatar David, emaciated, forced to dig his own grave. Maxim Herkin, Eitan Horn, Segev Kalfon, Bar Kupperstein, Omri Meran, Eitan Moore, Yosef Chaim Ochana, Alon Ohel, Avinatam Or, and Matan Tsengarker. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do something I've never done before. I want to speak from this forum directly to those hostages through loudspeakers. I've surrounded Gaza with massive loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope that our dear hostages will hear my message. And I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. אחינו הגיבורים, מדבר ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו. אני פונה עליכם מעל בימת האו"ם. לא שכחנו אתכם, אפילו לא לשנייה. העם כולו איתכם, ואנחנו לא נשקוט ולא נרפה עד שנחזיר את כולכם הביתה. החיים והחללים כאחד. Our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter and we will not rest until we bring all of you home. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried. They're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms. Let my people go. Free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48. Free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel. And of course, you understand that the war in Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I'm sure there are people in New York or in London or in Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? And the answer is everything. Because our enemies are your enemies. So let's do something else. So first at the UN, let's do a pop quiz. And raise your hand if you know the answer. Here's the first question. Who shouts death to America? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct, all of the above. Second question. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? Is it A, Al-Qaeda, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, Iran, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct. Again. So here's the point I wanted to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror. I think many of you are already feeling in your own societies the radical Islamist surge. You know, I'm sure you do, you know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. So I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us privately thank us. They tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence, once said, if the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. He said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags, and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that. But regrettably, many leaders who are represented in this hall, they send a very different message. Sure, in the days immediately following October 7th, many of them supported Israel. But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack. We fought back. Now just imagine, just sit back for a second and imagine an attack against America proportioned to the attack against Israel on October 7th. Imagine a regime, a terror regime, dispatching thousands of terrorists to invade the United States. They massacre 40,000 Americans. They take 10,000 Americans hostage. What do you think America would do? You think America would leave that regime standing? You don't think that. No way, not a chance. The United States would wipe out that terror regime and ensure that such savagery would never threaten America again. This is precisely what Israel is doing in Gaza. We're wiping out the terror regime of Hamas and ensuring that this savagery will never threaten Israel again. That's what we are doing. That's what any self-respecting government would do. And it's a yet that I'm sorry to say here. Yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a 7-front war against barbarism with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you. It's an indictment of weak-kneed leaders who appease evil rather than support a nation whose brave soldiers guard you from the barbarians at the gate. They're already penetrating your gates. When will you learn? You can't appease your way out of jihad, and you won't escape the Islamist storm by sacrificing Israel. To overcome that storm, you have to stand with Israel. But that's not what you're doing. As the prophets of Israel foretold in the Bible, you've turned good into evil and evil into good. Now I want to drill down on this. Take the false charge of genocide. Israel is accused of deliberately targeting civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposite is true. The head of urban warfare studies, Colonel John Spencer, he's perhaps the world's greatest expert on urban warfare. And he says, Israel is applying more measures to minimize civilian casualties than any military in history. And because we're doing that, the ratio of non-combatant to combatant casualties is less than 2-to-1 in Gaza. That's an astoundingly low ratio, lower than NATO's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, especially when you consider that Gaza is one of the most densely populated urban areas on Earth. It has hundreds of miles of terror tunnels underground, and it has countless terror towers above ground, and thousands of terrorists embedded in the tunnels and in these towers in civilian areas. If you want to see what measures Israel takes to avoid civilian casualties in this war, just look at what we're doing now in Gaza City, the last Hamas stronghold, one of the 2 last strongholds. For 3 weeks, Israel dropped millions of leaflets, sent millions of text messages, and made countless phone calls urging civilians to leave Gaza City before our military moves in. At the same time, Hamas implants itself in mosques, schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and tries to force those civilians not to leave, to stay in harm's way. And it often threatens them at gunpoint if they try to do so. For Israel, every civilian casualty is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. Hamas uses civilians as human shields and as props in its sick propaganda war in Israel, against Israel, a propaganda war that the Western media buys hook, line, and sinker. Now, despite Hamas's threats, close to 700,000 Gazans, almost 750,000, have already heeded our calls and moved to safe zones. Now I want to ask you a simple question, a simple, logical question. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? Would we tell them, get out, if we want to commit genocide? We're trying to get them out. And Hamas is trying to keep them in. And this charge is so baseless. The comparison to genocide, wholesale slaughter of populations. What, did the Nazis ask the Jews to leave, kindly leave, go out? Did others, you want me to name all the genocidal leaders of history? Just go one by one. Did anyone do this? Did they say, get out so we can come in? Of course not. So the truth has been turned on its head. Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization whose charter calls for the murder of all Jews on the planet, this genocidal organization is given a pass. It's barely mentioned. While Israel, which does everything it can to get civilians out of harm's way, Israel is put in the dock. What a joke. You want to hear another one? Israel is accused of deliberately starving the people of Gaza when Israel is deliberately feeding the people of Gaza. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has let into Gaza more than 2 million tons of food and aid. That's 1 ton of aid for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. Nearly 3,000 calories per person per day. Some starvation policy. If there are Gazans who don't have enough food, it's because Hamas is stealing it. Hamas steals it, hoards it, and sells it at exorbitant prices to fight its war machine. Last month, even the UN, not exactly a supporter of Israel. You're supposed to laugh, by the way. Last month, even the UN admitted that Hamas and other armed groups looted 85% of the trucks. That's why you have deprivation. Those who peddled the blood libels of genocide and starvation against Israel are no better than those who peddled blood libels against the Jews in the Middle Ages when they falsely accused us of poisoning wells, spreading plague, and using the blood of children to bake Passover matzahs. Anti-Semitism dies hard. In fact, it doesn't die at all. It just keeps coming back with its libelous lies, refurbished, regurgitated over and over again. And I want to tell you something else. These anti-Semitic lies, they have consequences. In recent months, Jews have been assaulted in Canada, Australia, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. Here in America, an elderly Holocaust survivor was burned to death in Colorado. And a beautiful young couple from the Israeli embassy in Washington was brutally gunned down right in front of the Holocaust Museum there. Thankfully, President Trump's administration is forcefully fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism, and every government here should follow its lead. But instead, many do the opposite. They actually reward the worst anti-Semites on earth. This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. Now, let me say that again. Nearly 90% of Palestinians supported the attack on October 7th. It's not supported only, they celebrated it. They danced on the rooftops. They threw candies. That's both in Gaza and in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as you call it. And it's just the way they celebrated another horror, 9/11. They danced on the rooftops. They cheered. They threw candy. You know what message the leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off. Well, I have a message for these leaders. When the most savage terrorists on earth are effusively praising your decision, you didn't do something right. You did something wrong, horribly wrong. Your disgraceful decision will encourage terrorism against Jews and against innocent people everywhere. It will be a mark of shame on all of you. But wait a minute, Mr. Prime Minister, they tell me. Wait a minute. We believe in a two-state solution where the Jewish state of Israel will live side by side in peace with the Palestinian state. There's only one problem with that. The Palestinians, they don't believe in this solution. They never have. They don't want a state next to Israel. They want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. And that's why every time they were offered a Palestinian state, but were required to end the conflict with Israel and recognize the Jewish state, every time, over the decades, they turned it down. And that is why every time they were given territory, they used it to attack us. In fact, they effectively had a Palestinian state in Gaza. So what did they do with that state? Peace? Coexistence? No. They attacked us time and time again. Totally unprovoked. They fired rockets into our cities. They murdered our children. They turned Gaza into a terror base from which they committed the October 7th massacre. So here's the uncomfortable truth. The persistent Palestinian rejection of a Jewish state in any boundary is what has driven this conflict for over a century. It is still driving it. It's not the absence of a Palestinian state. It's the presence and existence of a Jewish state. And I find it amazing that the foreign chancelleries and the ministries and all those who pontificate about this, and the leaders, how can they not see this basic truth when it is repeated again and again and again ad nauseum? And I want to say something else. This rejection of a Jewish state not only applies to Hamas, it also applies to the so-called moderate Palestinian Authority. You should know that the Palestinian authorities pays terrorists to slay Jews. The more Jews the terrorists slay, the more the Palestinian Authority pays. The Palestinian Authority names its government buildings, its public squares, its schools, after the mass murderers of Jews, which they glorify as martyrs. They pay and glorify not just the killer of Jews, but also killers of Christians. Christians like Taylor Force, an American veteran who was brutally murdered in Israel by Palestinian terrorists. But, that I hear from the Western leaders. They tell me, the PA promised us it will reform. And I know this time, Prime Minister, it will be different. Yeah, right. We've heard these promises for decades. They always promise. They never deliver. Because you see, the Palestinian Authority is corrupt to the core. They haven't held elections in 20 years. They use the same textbooks as Hamas, exactly the same textbooks. They teach their children to hate Jews and destroy the Jewish state. And Christians don't fare much better. When Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, was under Israeli control, 80% of its residents were Christians. But since the PA took control, that number has dwindled to under 20%. These are the people you want to give a state to? What you're doing is giving the ultimate reward to intolerant fanatics who perpetrated and supported the October 7th massacre. Giving the Palestinians a state 1 mile from Jerusalem after October 7th is like giving Al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th. This is sheer madness. It's insane, and we won't do it. So here's another message to those Western leaders. Israel will not allow you to shove a terror state down our throats. We will not commit national suicide because you don't have the guts to face down a hostile media and anti-Semitic mobs demanding Israel's blood. And I want you to grasp something else, which is also distorted in the media. I say this not only in my name or the name of my government, but on behalf of all the people of Israel. Last year, there was a vote in the Knesset, our parliament, whether or not to oppose the imposition of a Palestinian state. You want to guess what the results were? Out of 120 members of our parliament, 99 voted against and only 9 supported. That's over 90%. It's not a fringe group. It's not the prime minister who himself is extreme or he's held hostage by extreme parties to his right. It's over 90% of Israelis. My opposition to a Palestinian state is not simply my policies or my government's policy. It's the policy of the state and people of the state of Israel. Western leaders may have buckled under the pressure. And I guarantee you one thing, Israel won't. Israel's victories over the Iranian... Thank you, I know you won't too, that's good. Israel's victories over the Iranian terror axis have opened up possibilities for peace that were unthinkable 2 years ago. Take Syria. For decades, the very idea of peace between Israel and Syria seemed unimaginable. Well, no more. Today, we have begun serious negotiations with the new Syrian government. I believe an agreement can be reached that respects Syria's sovereignty and protects both Israeli security and the security of the minorities in the region, including the Druze minority. From the founding of Israel, Jews and Druze have been brothers in arms. We have fought together, we've bled together, we built our lives together. When I was a young commander in Israel's Special Forces, my own life was saved by the invaluable advice given to me by a great friend, Salim Shufi, a heroic Druze IDF veteran. And that's why I couldn't sit idly by, nor could Israel sit idly by, while the Druze were being slaughtered by jihadists. And I instructed our forces to stop the massacre, which they promptly did. Peace between Israel and Lebanon is possible as well. I call on the Lebanese government to also begin direct negotiations with Israel. I commend it for its declared aim to disarm Hezbollah. But we need more than words. If Lebanon takes genuine and sustained action to disarm Hezbollah, I'm sure we can achieve a sustainable peace. Of course, until that happens, we will take whatever action we need to defend ourselves and to maintain the conditions of the ceasefire which was established in Lebanon. Our goal is not merely to monitor Hezbollah's actions, but to prevent them from violating the ceasefire and attacking us at any time. But I'm sure that if the Lebanese government persists in its goal of disarming Hezbollah, peace will come very speedily and very readily. Victory over Hezbollah has made peace possible with our two Arab neighbors in the north. Victory over Hamas will make peace possible with nations throughout the Arab and Muslim world. Our victory would lead to a dramatic extension and expansion of the historic Abraham Accords, which President Trump brokered between Arab leaders and myself 5 years ago. And I took note, as I'm sure you did too, of the encouraging words spoken here by the President of Indonesia. This is the country with the largest Muslim population of all nations. And it's also a sign of what could come. Forward-looking Arabs and Muslim leaders know that cooperating with Israel will provide them with groundbreaking Israeli technologies, including in medicine and science, in agriculture and water, in defense and AI, and so many other fields. I believe that in the coming years, the Middle East will look dramatically different. Many of those who wage war on Israel today will be gone tomorrow. Brave peacemakers will take their place. And nowhere will this be more true than in Iran. The long-suffering Iranian people will regain their freedom. They will make Iran great again. And our two ancient peoples, the people of Israel and the people of Iran, will restore a friendship that will benefit the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, the horrors that happened on one dark day, October 7th, those horrors happened countless times during the centuries of my people's exiles among the nations. Jewish blood was cheap. Jews were killed with impunity. We had to beg others to defend us. The rise of Israel did not mean that the attempts to destroy us would end. It meant that we could fight back against those attempts. And that is exactly what Israel has done since October 7th. Our sons and daughters fought like lions. Our brave soldiers donned their uniforms and rushed into battle. They were armed with the dreams of the 100 generations of Jews who came before them. The dream of living as a free people in the land of Israel, our beloved homeland for more than 3,000 years. The dreams of living in our own independent state. The dream of having an army to defend ourselves. And the dream of being a light unto the nations, a beacon of progress, ingenuity, innovation, for the benefit of all humanity. On October 7th, the enemies of Israel tried to extinguish that light. 2 years later, the resolve of Israel and the strength of Israel burned brighter than ever. With God's help, that strength and that resolve would lead us to a speedy victory and to a brilliant future of prosperity and peace. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Muhammad Shehbaz Sharif, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Laysa al-birra an tawallu wujuhakum qibla al-mashriqi wal-maghribi. Walakin al-birra man amana billahi wal-yawm al-akhir wal-malaikati wal-kitabi wal-nabiyyin wa ata al-mala ala hubbihi zawil qurba wal-yatama والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين في الركاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والمؤفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك
Those who believe in God are those who are on the side of good and not evil.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I wish to congratulate Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock on assuming the presidency of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I also commend Secretary General Antonio Guterres for his bold leadership of the United Nations in testing times. Ladies and gentlemen, our world is more complex today than ever before. Conflicts are intensifying, international law is being brazenly violated, humanitarian crises are multiplying, terrorism remains a potent threat, disinformation and fake news undermine trust, climate change threatens our very survival, and more so countries like Pakistan. Today, multilateralism is no more an option. It is need of the hour. Excellencies, Pakistan's foreign policy, guided by the vision of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is based on peace, mutual respect, and cooperation. We believe in the peaceful settlement of disputes through dialogue and diplomacy. Last year, from this very podium, I had warned that Pakistan would act most decisively against any external aggression. Those words of mine proved true. I hope it didn't. But then that is destiny. When in May this year, my country confronted unprovoked aggression from our eastern front, the enemy came shrouded in arrogance. We sent them back in humiliation, delivering our bloody nose. Excellencies, India sought to extract political gains from a human tragedy by spurning my sincere offer of an independent international investigation into the Pahalgam incident. Instead, it attacked our cities and targeted our innocent civilians. When our territorial integrity and national security were violated, our response was in accordance with the right of self-defense under Article 51 of United Nations Charter. Our valiant armed forces, under the stellar leadership of Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir, mounted an operation of stunning professionalism, bravery, and acumen, repulsing the enemy's attack under Air Chief Marshal Zahir Babar Sidhu. Our falcons took flight and etched their answer across the skies, resulting in 7 of the Indian jets turned to scrap and dust. A decisive response a decisive response to the aggressor that will echo through the annals of history. To the fearless architects of this victory, to every officer and soldier, heirs of our martyrs, their names are forever engraved in glory. To mothers of our martyrs, their courage guides our path forward, and their sacrifice shall never be in vain, inshallah, God willing. And to every Pakistani, you stood as one unbreakable wall, a bunyanum marsus. Excellencies, though in a position of strength, Pakistan agreed to a ceasefire facilitated by President Donald Trump's bold and visionary leadership. We express our deep appreciation to him and his team for their active role in bringing about the ceasefire. President Trump's efforts for peace helped avert a more threatening war in South Asia. Had he not intervened timely and decisively, the consequences of a full-fledged war would have been catastrophic. Who would have lived to tell what happened? And therefore, in recognition of President Trump's wonderful and outstanding contribution to promote peace in our part of the world, Pakistan nominated him for Nobel Peace Prize. And I think this is the least we could do for his love for peace. And I think truly he's a man of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, we're also grateful to our friends and partners, including China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Azerbaijan, Iran, UAE, and of course, UN Secretary General for extending their diplomatic support to Pakistan at this crucial time. Excellencies, we have won the war, and now we seek to win peace in our part of the world. And this is my most sincere and serious offer before this August Assembly of the World Nations. Pakistan stands ready for a composite, comprehensive, and result-oriented dialogue with India on all outstanding issues. South Asia requires, ladies and gentlemen, proactive rather than provocative leadership. India's unilateral and illegal attempt to hold the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance defies the provisions of the treaty itself, as well as the norms of international law. Pakistan has made it abundantly clear, and let there be no doubt once again in anybody's mind, as I said last year in this hall, from this podium, we will definitely and ardently defend, inshallah, the inseparable right of our 240 million people on these waters. To us, any violation of this Indus Treaty represents an act of war. Ladies and gentlemen, through this august House, I wish to assure the Kashmiri people that I stand with them. The people of Pakistan stand with them. And one day soon, inshallah, India's tyranny in Kashmir will come to a grinding halt. Kashmir will gain its fundamental right to self-determination through an impartial plebiscite under the auspices of this very organization, United Nations. Excellencies, the plight of the Palestinian people is one of the most heart-wrenching tragedies of our times. This prolonged injustice is a stain on the global conscience and our collective moral failure. For nearly 80 years, the Palestinians have courageously endured Israel's brutal occupation of their homeland in the West Bank. Each passing day brings new brutality, illegal settlers who terrorize and kill with impunity, and nobody can challenge them and question them. And in Gaza, Israel's genocidal onslaught has unleashed unspeakable terror upon women and children in a manner we have not witnessed in annals of history. In blind pursuit of its nefarious goals, the Israeli leadership has unleashed a shameful campaign against the innocent Palestinians, which history will always remember as one of its darkest chapters. But speak we must, Madam President, we must speak and speak loud and clear. Our words are too little, too late for Hind Rajab, a child, nay, a little baby. We have all heard her trembling voice on that phone call, which little Hind made as she struggled to stay alive under Israeli onslaught and atrocities. Can you imagine that little girl, Hind Rajab, as if she was our daughter? Can you imagine not having the compassion to spare her life? My agony and the agony of the entire Muslim Ummah, indeed, I think, the agony of all the nations on the planet is that we failed Hind Rajab, and she will not forgive us in this world and the world hereafter. As they say, ladies and gentlemen, the smallest coffins are the heaviest to carry. I, for one, would know, for I too carried the tiny coffin of a 7-year-old Irtiza Abbas during the recent confrontation with India. He was only 6 years old. Therefore, we cannot and we must not fail these children of Gaza or any child anywhere in the world. We must find a path to a ceasefire now and just now. Pakistan firmly supports Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan firmly supports the demand of the Palestinian people for the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state with pre-1967 borders and Al-Quds Sharif as its capital. Palestine can no longer remain under Israeli shackles. It must be liberated, and liberated with full commitment and with full force. Excellencies, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we were among the first to recognize Palestinian statehood in 1988. And now we welcome the recognition of the state of Palestine by a number of countries recently around the globe, and urge others to also follow suit, because time and tide wait for none. We are further grateful for President Trump's timely initiative to invite Arab Islamic states 3 days ago here in this building for a consultative session at the United Nations. And I was also part of that consultative process. And I think, and I hope and pray to God that it has rekindled hope for a ceasefire in the nearest future, for which the credit must again be attributed to President Trump for this peace initiative. Excellencies, Israel's recent attack on Doha and its continued violations of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of numerous countries is reflective of its rogue behavior. Pakistan stands unwaveringly with our brothers and sisters in Qatar, we also support all efforts for a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine conflict in line with the UN Charter to end human sufferings and global turmoil caused by this protracted war. Madam President, Pakistan condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestation. For over 2 decades, Pakistan has been at the front line of global counterterrorism efforts, having suffered over 90,000 people. We lost 90,000 people of our country, babies, children, mothers, sisters, brothers, elderly people, doctors, engineers, and also suffered economic loss of $150 billion. Please tell me, put your hand on your heart, that what can be a bigger manifestation of our commitment to fight terrorism and erase it not only from the face of Pakistan, but from the face of this global world. And I believe a man killed in New York is a man killed in Lahore, a man killed in Islamabad is a man killed in London. It's a global village. So I think unless and until terrorism is defeated hands down, this world will not be a peaceful place to live. And for that, Pakistan's sacrifices are probably the biggest around the globe. It must be respected and appreciated because we are a bulwark. Had these terrorists not been encountered by us, they would have been roaming on the streets of New York and London and God knows Far East. So I think this is our humble contribution, not only for the people of Pakistan, but the people all over the world. Today we face externally sponsored terrorism, particularly from foreign-funded groups such as the TTP, Fitna al-Khawarij, Fitna al-Hindustan, BLA, and its Majid Brigade. Operating from Afghan soil, these groups are responsible for some of the most heinous attacks inside Pakistan, including the dastardly Jafar Express train incident earlier this year, the train was hijacked and 400 people were kept for days and weeks. And mercifully, by Allah Almighty's grace, our armed forces and law enforcing agencies were able to recover them. Now, as an immediate neighbor and a brotherly country of Afghanistan, Pakistan has a direct stake in a peaceful Afghanistan. We believe that the key to development and prosperity lies in regional stability and connectivity. Pakistan continues to engage with all partners to extend humanitarian assistance, promote economic recovery, and encourage inclusive political framework in Afghanistan. The interim Afghan government must, however, uphold human rights, including women's rights. Above all, we expect that Afghan interim government to take effective action against terrorist groups and to ensure that Afghan soil is not used for terrorism against any country. Ladies and gentlemen, there must be no space for hate speech, discrimination, or violence against any person or against any religion. Hate-driven ideologies such as India's Hindutva-driven extremism pose a danger to the entire world. While there is growing recognition of the dangers posed by Islamophobia, the imperative of effectively combating this menace can hardly be overemphasized. Pakistan welcomes the appointment of a UN Special Envoy to combat this scourge. Ladies and gentlemen, while we are confronted with the climate crisis, it demands the most urgent collective action. In 2022, Pakistan faced massive floods of humongous proportions that caused huge losses amounting to $34 billion and many valuable lives lost. This year again, we are dealing with another mega flood with thousands of villages washed away from the face of the earth. millions of people displaced, more than 1,000 killed, and billions of dollars of crop, livestock, and property washed away, lost to flood waters. Our nation stands united in these testing times, and we are dealing with this natural calamity with remarkable resilience by the grace of God. I have declared a climate emergency to cope with this challenge. The catastrophic floods of 2022 and 2025 this year are glaring examples of loss and damage caused due to climate change. Pakistan, to the contrary, my honorable guests in this hall and through the cameras around the globe, Pakistan contributes less than 1% of global emissions annually, yet it continues to face the relentless brunt and muddy waves of climate change. And then we are told to borrow loans and add on to our debt, huge debt pillars we have over the period of time. This is not fairness. This is not equality. This is not justice. This is not fair play. How can you expect a country which is a developing country facing humongous flood challenges every year due to climate change and no fault of ours, and yet we are told to borrow more loans? I think borrowing loan would be destroying your economy. We will be better off than not borrowing loan and standing on our own feet, working hard, tirelessly, blood and sweat, and we will, inshallah, make Pakistan a great country, inshallah. Ladies and gentlemen, while we deal with climate change, I bear good tidings on the domestic economic front. Socio-economic development and the welfare of our people are among my government's foremost priorities. We have successfully implemented deep-rooted structural macroeconomic reforms, modernized and broadened our taxation system, intensified efforts to mobilize productive investment, and embraced digitization, AI, and crypto as the tools of the future. Strategic partnerships, including our all-weather cooperation with China through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor under President Xi Jinping's landmark Belt and Road Initiative, are contributors to our progress as I speak. I admire the vision and foresight of President Xi Jinping, whose recently launched Global Governance Initiative, along with other global initiatives, offers a comprehensive framework for a more just, fair, and inclusive development. Excellencies, as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, Pakistan is playing its constructive role in conflict prevention. The unanimous adoption of Resolution 2788 under our presidency of the Council has renewed our collective commitment to multilateralism, respect for the UN Charter, and effective implementation of UN Security Council resolutions. Excellencies, at the end, let me assure you that Pakistan will always stand for peace, justice, and development, for a revitalized United Nations, and for cooperative and multilateralism that is fair and inclusive and delivers for all. Therefore, let this 80th anniversary not simply commemorate history. Let us make history and chart a future for the next 80 years with these United Nations as enduring hope for global good. Let us truly strive to become better together. Thank you very much. United Nations, long live. God bless you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I